Something just happened this weekend. Something that, well, has basically no modern precedent. A major line was crossed, a world leader was taken into custody, and right now, the whole world is just holding its breath. So we're going to break down exactly what went down.
You know, this sounds like something straight out of a Hollywood movie, right? A Tom Clancy novel. But it's not. This is real life. The United States just sent its military into a sovereign nation and captured its sitting president.
And that president? It's Nicolás Maduro of Venezuela. And get this, he's not being held at Guantanamo Bay or some secret site. He's in Brooklyn, a federal detention center in New York City, about to face charges in an American court.
Okay, so the question on literally everyone's mind right now is how? How on earth did we get here?
I mean, the details that are coming out are just wild. Maduro was flown to a military base in New York. We've all seen the footage now. Him in handcuffs, limping, and he's being held in the same Brooklyn jail that's housed some really high-profile inmates. But the craziest part, the absolute kicker, when U.S. forces captured him, the first thing he apparently said to them was, "Happy New Year. You just can't make this stuff."
And what about the man who ordered the operation? President Trump's reaction was, well, something else. He said, and I'm quoting here, "I saw the whole action as if I were watching a television show." It's a pretty stunning way to describe a military operation, right? Really gives you a window into how the White House is framing this whole thing.
So if it was a television show, what was the plot? Let's dive into the actual operation, the nuts and bolts of how it went down. It was called Operation Absolute Resolve. And man, did this move fast. Look at this timeline. Trump gives the green light late on January 2nd. A couple of hours later, boom, special forces are at Maduro's compound. Before dawn, he and his wife are on a U.S. Navy ship. And the very next day, he's in New York. Just incredibly fast. And don't picture some small, sneaky SEAL team here. The scale of this was massive. We're talking more than 150 aircraft. Think about that. Launched from 20 different bases all across the hemisphere. This was an absolute flex of U.S. military muscle. So you had the skies just swarming with the best of the best. F-22s, F-35s, bombers, drones, all providing air cover. Now, it wasn't a walk in the park. There was resistance. One U.S. helicopter actually took some gunfire. But even with that, the entire ground operation inside Venezuela over in less than 30 minutes. That's just overwhelming force and speed.
Okay, so that's the how. Now for the why. How is the U.S. government even justifying this? Well, it all comes down to dusting off a very old American policy and giving it a brand new, aggressive twist.
All right, quick history refresh for everybody. The Monroe Doctrine. Way back in the 1800s, it was basically the U.S. telling Europe, hey, stay out of our backyard, the Western Hemisphere. But you know, over the years, that message kind of evolved. It became more of a justification for the U.S. to step into Latin American countries whenever it felt stability was at risk.
Now, fast forward to today. President Trump has grabbed that old idea and slapped his own name on it, calling it the Donroe Doctrine. And it's a whole different ballgame. It's not about keeping others out anymore. It's about asserting American power within the hemisphere. His message is crystal clear. American dominance here is not up for debate, period.
So under this new Donroe Doctrine, the White House laid out its goals. It's basically a three-step plan. 1. They say it's about law and order, arresting Maduro on those drug and weapons charges that have been around for a while. 2, and this is a big one, it's about the economy, specifically oil, securing Venezuela's huge oil reserves and getting U.S. companies in there to fix things. And number 3, this is the most controversial part. The U.S. says it will run Venezuela directly until they decide it's stable enough for a transition. Wow.
You can't do something like this without making waves. Big ones. And sure enough, the global reaction was instant, and it has split the world right down the middle.
Just look at the split here. On one side, you've got countries like Russia and China just blasting the U.S., calling it a blatant violation of international law. Even Brazil, a neighbor, said this crossed a line. The UN is, of course, deeply concerned. But then you look at the other side. Key allies are being a bit more careful. The UK is basically saying, we're not sad to see him go. Israel is praising Trump's leadership. So a total split in how the world is seeing this.
And what's happening inside Venezuela? Well, it's pretty much chaos. Officially, the government's in emergency mode. They've named Maduro's VP as the new interim president. But on the streets, it's a completely different story. It's totally divided.
You have his supporters out there screaming that this was a kidnapping, while his opponents are literally dancing in the streets, feeling like they can finally see a light at the end of the tunnel.
Which, of course, leads us to the biggest question of all. What happens next? I mean, it's one thing to capture a president. It's a whole other thing to try and run their country.
Now, everyone just assumed the U.S. would back the main opposition leader, right? Put her in charge. But no, in a pretty shocking twist, Trump has already said he is not going to hand power to her. He's even suggested he might work with Maduro's own VP. So nobody really knows what the American endgame here is. It's all up in the air.
And as shocking as this all feels, we do need to remember, this isn't the first time. The U.S. has a history here. They went into Panama and got Noriega back in '89. They captured Saddam Hussein in Iraq in 2003. So Maduro is now the third foreign leader to be captured by the U.S. military in this way.
And amidst all the politics and military strategy, we can't lose sight of the human cost. This operation might have been fast, but it wasn't clean. Reports are coming in that around 40 people, soldiers and civilians, were killed in the U.S. strikes.
So that's where we are. A president in custody, a nation in total limbo, and the rulebook for how countries deal with each other has just been torn up. It leaves us with this one huge, lingering question. What kind of precedent does this set? What happens when one country decides it has the power and the right to just go in and run another?